Chapter 3. Eyes was beautiful in the starlight. It emphasized the richness of her hair, the soft delicacy of her skin, the eyes themselves. She seemed determined to have all that, and all else she possessed, carved up. "We have guns," she insisted for the 1,000th time. I sighed, dropped my cigarette, and stepped on it. I glanced at the open hatch behind her, filled with dim light and the energetic sounds of the others arguing over whether or not I should be trusted at this late date. There was repeated mentions of the pact uttered with tones of faith better suited to a suicide pact, which was what it would be. I wondered what they would think if they knew I couldn't care less. I glanced back at Eyes. I did care about her, maybe. But dumb is dumb. "You have guns," I conceded at last. "But they have blazers. Also concussion grenades and mortars and open-air armor. Have you ever seen what can be done with that? They can peel this building apart." Buildings don't shoot back. I blinked. From one bazaar to the next. From one child to another. Madness. "Neither do dead people," I barked angrily. She stared, looked away. Her foot tapped impatiently. This was all decided for her long ago. "Look, you gather up your little guns and put them in a pile. Then you all line up behind them out of reach and wait for Borglin to come. Then you smile at him. Then you give him the keys to the city." "Then what?" she asked sarcastically. "Then he won't kill you." She opened her mouth to speak, but was interrupted by a particularly loud burst of arguing. She gestured towards the noise with a toss of her head. "They don't trust you," she said. "Fine." She frowned. "I know what you're trying to do. I beg your pardon." "Oh, come on, Jack," she said with a conspiratorial smile. She squatted down in front of me. She put a feathery hand on my knee. "I know you're not as cold and as hard as you make yourself out to be." I stared at her. This was not happening. "You haven't fooled me with this bit of yours. You never have." "I haven't," I echoed dully. "Not a bit. I know you, Jack. I know that you care." "Of course I do. That's why I'm trying to get you to—" "No. You care, Jack. You care about justice, and you care about right and wrong, and you care about this thing turning out the way you know it should." She really believed it. I could see that. I thought I saw something else, too. She believed they would win, of course, because they were in the right, by God. But she believed in more than that. She believed we would all live to see it. Casualties, of course. Strangers, mostly. Or the enemy. But basically all, and I meant all, would be well. She believed it would be easy. She was dead. I took her hand from my knee and kissed it softly. "Goodbye," I said, with as little emphasis as I could manage. Then I stood up and headed back the way I had come across the rooftops. She raised up slowly, watching me go. I could feel it building behind my back. "Damn you!" she blurted out at last. "You're going to be that way to the very end, aren't you?" I nodded. I've seen very ends before. The explosion of gunfire seemed to come from everywhere at once. The street below, the inside of the building, the surrounding rooftops. The answering blazers were silent, but just as obvious in the eerie blue glows their arcing beams made on the plasteel walls across the way. I had dropped to the deck with the first sound. So, thank God, had Eyes. The blaze aimed at her cut a neat hole in the top of the doorway instead of her nose. 2 beams arced at me a second later, passing far too close overhead. I crawled over to a space underneath the protection of the meter-high roof adjoining. More beams struck, from new and different angles, pressing my nose into the damn rooftop. Damn! They seemed to be everywhere. The gunfire had cut the argument short inside. I heard boots stomping and the clicking of rifle business. I turned to the open doorway. "Stay in!" I yelled to them. No such luck. The idiots weren't convinced until their first 3 crusaders had been sliced apart. I screamed as a headless torso plopped to the roof beside her. I thought she was a little late. Somebody offed the interior light. Also a little late. But still, a good idea. I crawled rapidly through the darkness towards the entrance and cover. I found the way blocked. It was inconceivable, but the Crusaders were using the cover of darkness to get out and fight. I couldn't believe it. "You fools! You want to die? We're pinned!" They didn't even bother to acknowledge me. They simply crawled past, took up the first hint of cover in their way, and opened fire in every direction. Worse still was the reaction to the murderous crossfire that responded. "There they are!" shouted a half-dozen voices at the appearance of the various beams. Then half a dozen or more rose to charge each position, firing from the hip. Some of them actually yelled battle cries as they charged. Some of them actually lived, too. But not many. It didn't matter. The doorway was positively choked with more storming out to take their places. Not once did they consider retreating. Not when 20 or more had died. Not when the number of beams suddenly, inexplicably, doubled. Not when the countercharge was launched from all sides but one. That one safe direction was for me. The building was at the very edge of the maze proper. There was nothing between it and the woods but a handful of 1- and 2-story shacks. I figured the fall was worth it. The trouble was that I wouldn't actually be able to see where I would be landing. I could possibly fall the entire 3 stories. No choice. I edged out onto the overhanging lip and paused for one last glimpse back. It was horrible. The beams were coming from 24 different directions at once. The crossfire was a solid mesh of maiming, burning, slicing. Damn them, I thought. Damn you! I shouted. Then I rolled over and dropped. I bounced on something 3 or 4 meters below, but it was slanted and I fell some more, bouncing some more, badly and out of control. And then I hit something very hard. Hard enough to go out before the pain had a chance.